2:17 local time. Night still hangs over the Persian Gulf, heavy and unbroken above the forward deck of a U.S. Navy destroyer attached to the Fifth Fleet. A lookout stares into the dark. The engines hold a steady cruising rhythm. Far off, Bahrain is only a faint line of light at the horizon. Inside the Combat Information Center, the radar picture looks routine. Then it changes. A surface search operator goes rigid. New contacts, bearing 035, multiple. The SBI radar begins picking up thin, fast-moving returns lifting from the northern coastline. At first, they look almost like interference. Then the tracks settle. Speed rising, altitude low, inbound. The tactical display shifts from green to amber. Possible cruise profiles. The Air Warfare Coordinator speaks in a controlled, nearly level voice. Count 12. Stand by for classification. Nobody needs to shout. They already know what this means. Condition 3. Key stations across the ship are manned. Boots pound steel decks. Hatches seal shut. The forward 5-inch gun turns a few degrees to starboard, deliberate and precise. Close-in weapon systems power up with a rising mechanical whine. Below deck, vertical launch cells unlock one after another. On the main screen, the contacts keep multiplying. 14, 17, 20, some skim the sea, others climb, then descend in shallow arcs. This is no scattered event. It is coordinated. At 2:18, the destroyer's Aegis combat system starts automatic threat evaluation. Each track is numbered. Speed, bearing, projected impact point. Time to closest approach. 3 minutes, 40 seconds. The ship is operating legally in international waters, part of the security shield around the U.S. Fifth Fleet based in Bahrain. Tonight, that shield is being tested. Recommend engagement, the weapons officer says. Engage, the captain replies. No hesitation. The first pair of SM-2 surface-to-air missiles erupts from the forward launch cells, rising into the dark on twin towers of flame. The deck shudders. Sailors topside feel the heat sweep over them as the missiles arc upward, engines burning bright against the black sky. Inside CIC, intercept geometry tightens. SM-2 time to intercept 30 seconds. The inbound tracks split. Some drop even lower, hugging the curve of the sea. A classic sea skimming profile built to compress reaction time. 2:19. Splash 1. A bright flash blooms high above the Gulf. Debris fans outward and falls into open water. Splash 2. But the screen does not clear. More tracks are coming. Electronic warfare operators bring the SLQ-32 suite fully online. The destroyer begins sending controlled bursts of jamming energy, probing for guidance links, trying to disrupt targeting locks. New launch indications, a sensor technician calls out. Additional heat signatures inland, wave 2. The count on screen climbs past 25. This is not a warning shot. This is saturation. Somewhere along the Iranian coastline, launch batteries are still active. At 2:20, another pair of SM-2s fires, then another. The aft launcher joins the fight. Missiles rise in staggered rhythm. Above the Gulf, the sky flickers with intercepts, white bursts against the dark horizon. Track Sierra 21 breaking through outer ring, the Air Warfare Coordinator warns. Sea Skimmer, Mach Point 8, bearing 040. Time to impact, 1 minute, 50 seconds. The fight moves closer. Shift to ESSM. Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles launch in tight pairs, built for fast, low-altitude threats. Their motors ignite and level almost immediately, racing just above the waterline. The destroyer heels slightly as it adjusts course, reducing its profile and tightening the defensive geometry. 2:21. Ballistic profile detected. Another voice cuts through the room. A high arcing track descending fast. Likely a medium-range ballistic missile launched minutes earlier, now entering terminal phase. Recommend SM-6. Shoot. A single SM-6 rips upward, climbing hard, guided by shipboard radar and offboard sensor data. For a moment, the tactical display becomes a web of intersecting vectors. Then, intercept confirmed. A dull, distant shock rolls across the water, but the situation is still not over. 4 cruise missiles remain inside the outer defensive ring. Distance closing 35,000 yards. The Phalanx CIWS mounts now track automatically, white domes pivoting with cold precision. Their radar feeds layer over the incoming tracks. 2:22. Multiple leakers prepare close-in engagement. No panic, no shouting, only systems moving through sequences rehearsed long before tonight. Another ESSM intercept flashes above the horizon. 3 tracks left. One small, drone-like signature breaks slightly off axis, angling toward the larger radar silhouette deeper in the formation, toward the 5th Fleet flagship operating in support. The Air Warfare Coordinator leans forward. Confirmed coordinated strike. This is deliberate. Outside, the Gulf remains black and flat. Inside CIC, radar glow reflects off-focused faces. Seconds continue to fall away. Layer by layer, steel and software stand between the fleet and impact. And beyond the horizon, more launch signatures begin to flicker to life. At 2:22 local time, the first wave still is not finished. On the display, 4 cruise missile tracks remain inside the outer defensive ring. They are low and fast, riding less than 50 feet above the surface, sea-skimming to vanish into clutter until the last possible moment. Range 28,000 yards, the Air Warfare Coordinator calls. Speed steady, bearing 040. The SPI radar adjusts gain, filtering sea noise. Fire control radars tighten, painting each target with precision. Engage with ESSM. 2 more evolved Sea Sparrow missiles launch from forward cells, their exhaust briefly lighting the bow. They flatten out almost immediately, racing just over the water. Inside CIC, every eye stays fixed. Time to intercept, 12 seconds. The first ESSM meets its target in a sharp, low flash, barely visible over the horizon. The second detonates moments later, scattering fragments across the surface. 2 tracks disappear, 2 remain, 2:23. Ballistic re-entry confirmed, second profile descending. The radar shifts upward. A steep, high-altitude track drops rapidly into terminal phase. SM-6 ready. Shoot! The Standard Missile 6 launches from the aft VLS, climbing aggressively. Mid-course guidance updates flow from a composite radar picture shared across multiple ships in formation. This is not one ship fighting alone. This is a network. The SM-6 cuts a white line into the darkness. For several seconds, both symbols converge on the display. Then the intercept happens. A distant flash blooms high over the Gulf. The ballistic track disappears, but saturation continues. 3 new low-altitude contacts appear along the northern edge of the screen. Additional sea skimmers. Wave 2 confirmed. Total inbound now 27. The captain stands steady on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. He is not watching the flashes. He is watching the horizon. Maintain course, he says quietly. Below, the electronic warfare team increases output. The SLQ-32 sends controlled bursts across known guidance frequencies, filling the electromagnetic spectrum with calculated interference. Detecting active radar seekers, the EW officer reports. Multiple emissions, Iranian profile. That confirms it. These threats are not flying blind. They are hunting. 224. Range 18,000 yards. Recommend close-in preparation. The Phalanx mounts complete their warm-up cycle. Internal radars lock onto the nearest tracks. The white domes track so smoothly they almost look casual. Mount 1 tracking, Mount 2 tracking. Outside, the first cruise missile breaks the horizon line, a faint silhouette against the Black Sea. CIWS free. The forward phalanx erupts with a tearing metallic roar. Streams of tracer fire arc into the dark, building a dense wall of tungsten. The missile comes apart in mid-flight, its payload detonating early in a sharp flash less than a mile from the hull. Fragments rain into the water. The ship does not flinch. Splash 1! Another cruise missile drops even lower, trying to exploit the engagement angle. Shift Mount 2! The aft phalanx opens up, firing at an unforgiving rate. The missile breaks apart, debris skidding across the surface before sinking. Splash 2. But the screen still is not clear. A smaller radar return turns sharply. An unmanned aerial vehicle, slower than the missiles, but maneuvering. Drone contact adjusting vector, possible targeting platform. Instead of running straight in, it begins to orbit, likely feeding updates to the remaining threats. Electronic spoofing engaged, the EW officer announces. The destroyer pushes false positional data into the spectrum, trying to pull the drone's sensors off target. For a moment, the UAV steadies, then it wobbles. Its track drifts several degrees away from the formation. Drone losing lock. A final burst from the forward phalanx ends it. The small return dissolves into static. 225. The tactical display steadies. No active inbound tracks inside 10,000 yards. Outer radar still scanning north. Silence returns to CIC, not relief. Recalculation. Launch origin triangulated, an intelligence specialist reports. Multiple coastal batteries. Approximate grid confirms coordinated inland sites. This was intentional. Not a rogue crew, not an accident. A synchronized barrage aimed at the 5th Fleet. Status reports come in from the formation. Other destroyers have also intercepted successfully. No direct hits, no meaningful damage beyond minor shock vibration. The fleet remains intact. Above them, the 1st Combat Air Patrol fighters from the carrier group check in on secure frequencies. Viper flight on station, establishing barrier. They push north, forming a protective arc beyond the ship's radar horizon. 227. the sea goes dark again. No flames, no visible smoke, only debris cooling in open water. But inland, infrared satellites still detect heat blooms, launchers that have not yet displaced. The Air Warfare Coordinator looks toward the captain. Sir, coastal signatures remain active. The meaning is obvious. The defensive phase is ending. The next move will not be interception. It will be decision. And somewhere along that coastline, radar operators are watching the same sky, aware their launch failed, but unaware of what may already be inbound in response. 2:28 local time. The sea is quiet again. Too quiet. Inside CIC, no one relaxes. The radar picture is clean for the first time in 11 minutes, but infrared overlays tell a different story. Faint heat still flickers along the northern coast. Launch sites that have not gone cold. Recommend sustained close-in posture, the Air Warfare Coordinator says. The captain nods once. Maintain defensive configuration. No step down. The ship remains at general quarters. Phalanx mounts stay armed. Missile cells stay hot. Electronic warfare continues low-level sweep patterns, probing for renewed emissions. Above the formation, two F/A-18E Super Hornets settle into a tight combat air patrol orbit. Their radars extend the defensive perimeter far beyond the ships. Viper 1, picture clean immediate, comes the call from airborne early warning. Then, stand by, new surface-to-air radar activation inland. On the destroyer's EW console, a narrowband spike appears. Fire control quality, brief, searching. They're reconstituting, the EW officer reports. Tracking intermittent lock attempts. This is the dangerous window. After the first exchange, before the second. 2:29. A fresh contact blinks onto radar. Single track, low altitude, speed building, possible late launch. Bearing 032. No mass wave this time, just one smaller cross-section. Range 35,000 yards. The captain answers immediately. Engage early. An ESSM launches, cutting low across the sea. Seconds stretch out. Inbound track maneuvering. The target dips lower, trying to hide in surface clutter. The ESSM corrects mid-course on updated guidance. Then it connects. A sharp flash breaks the horizon. The track disappears, but the sweep widens again. Two fast-moving aerial contacts lift off inland, climbing rapidly. Possible aircraft, the Air Warfare Coordinator says. Speed 450 knots, heading south. Iranian fighters. They level at medium altitude, staying just outside declared missile envelopes. Viper flight contacts north, Angels 20, airborne control says. Viper 1, tally 2, comes the reply. American fighters climb slightly, asserting radar presence without crossing escalation thresholds. No weapons released, no lock declared, just positioning. 2:31. Below, the destroyer's crew completes rapid damage checks. Minor shockwave vibration forward, no structural compromise. Systems green. On deck, sailors remain strapped in at key stations. Burnt propellant still lingers faintly in the night air. Drone-sized return, northeast quadrant. A small contact, erratic path, possibly reconnaissance. Engage with non-kinetic first, the captain orders. Electronic warfare output increases. Controlled jamming pulses spread outward. On screen, the drone's track begins to jitter. Contact unstable. The UAV dips, recovers, then veers sharply west. Recommend kinetic. Approved. The forward phalanx fires a short, disciplined burst. The drone vanishes in a scatter of fragments. 2:33. The sky remains tense but restrained. Iranian aircraft hold their distance. No fire control radar paints the formation. No new launch signatures appear. On the tactical display, the 5th Fleet settles into a layered defensive arc. Destroyers forward. Cruiser offset. Flagship deeper inside the formation. Every ship shares sensor data across encrypted networks. What one sees, all see. This is not improvisation. This is doctrine. 2:35. Launch site activity decreasing, intelligence reports. Multiple coastal radars go offline. Earlier intercepts and immediate cap presence have disrupted timing. The attack window is closing. But inland infrared satellites show something else. Mobile launch vehicles are shifting positions. They are not retreating. They are relocating. The captain studies updated grid coordinates. Confirm launch origin triangulation. Confirmed. Multiple batteries within 20-mile coastal belt. He never raises his voice. Prepare strike options. Inside CIC, the tone changes. Not louder, not faster, just different. Defensive calculations give way to offensive geometry. Tomahawk mission planners begin loading pre-surveyed coastal coordinates. Carrier air wing controllers adjust fuel and weapon status for strike-capable aircraft already airborne. Above the fleet, the FA-18S widen their orbit slightly, defining invisible boundaries. The Iranian fighters turn north, increasing separation. They have seen the intercepts. They have seen the barrier form. 2:37. No new inbound tracks, no renewed radar locks. The Gulf returns to black stillness, but the fleet remains fully ready. Because in modern naval warfare, survival is not the end state. Control is. The last debris from intercepted threats sinks beneath calm water. The radar picture shows only friendly tracks and distant coastal returns. The air warfare coordinator turns toward the captain. Sir, defensive phase complete. Fleet secure. A beat. The captain nods once. Very well. He looks north toward the coastline that lit up minutes earlier. They launched, he says quietly. In the glow of CIC screens, strike planning icons begin populating the map. And somewhere inland, radar operators watch their scopes clear, unaware that the next phase has already been calculated. Not in anger, not in panic, in precision. 2:41 local time. The defensive phase is over. No alarms now, no missiles leaving the deck. But inside CIC, the atmosphere has shifted. Strike overlays replace intercept vectors on the main screen. Coastal grids light up in muted blue squares, radar arrays, suspected mobile launchers, command nodes cataloged through months of surveillance. Confirm launch origin correlation, the captain says. Correlation confirmed, intelligence replies. 3 primary coastal batteries, 1 fixed radar array, 1 mobile command vehicle, all within 20 nautical miles of shoreline. The decision does not require debate. Execute strike package. No dramatic pause, no raised voice, only authorization codes transmitted over secure channels. 2:43. On the destroyer's forward deck, VLS hatches open in sequence. Deep inside the hull, Tomahawk cruise missiles receive final target updates, GPS coordinates, terrain contour matching, low flight profiles built to skim the Gulf before turning inland. Tomahawk ready. Fire. One after another, the missiles launch with a deep, controlled roar. They arc upward briefly, then level off, engines burning steady as they disappear north into the dark. At nearly the same moment, another destroyer in formation opens its own launch cells. More Tomahawks rise. This is not one ship responding. This is coordinated suppression. 2:45. Above the fleet, the E-2D Hawkeye tightens its orbit, feeding continuous radar updates to surface ships and fighters alike. The carrier Air Wing, already airborne in a defensive posture, shifts mission profiles. Strike Alpha cleared inbound. Airborne control transmits. 4. FA-18E. Super Hornets turn north, descending slightly to stay beneath hostile radar envelopes. Under their wings, precision-guided munitions hang steady. GBU-38 JDAMs programmed for hardened targets. EA-18G Growlers trail behind, electronic warfare pods humming as they prepare to blind coastal sensors. 2:47. The first Tomahawk reaches waypoint 2 and banks inland. On the destroyer's screens, near real-time satellite confirmation begins feeding in. Heat blooms flare along the coastline as Iranian radar arrays try to reacquire. Coastal Fire Control Radar active, EW reports. Seconds later, that signature disappears. Tomahawk impact. A bright flash blooms over the fixed array position. Structural collapse confirmed. Radar site neutralized. Another Tomahawk skims low over the water, then turns toward a suspected mobile launcher cluster. Infrared imagery shows vehicles scrambling. Too late. Impact. Secondary explosions spread outward. Fuel and stored munitions ignite in rapid succession. 2:49. The airborne strike group reaches release point. Growler jamming active. Electronic interference floods known air defense frequencies. Coastal missile sites struggle to hold clean tracks. Alpha 1, Pickle. The first JDAM drops cleanly, gliding under GPS guidance. It hits a reinforced bunker housing command and control equipment. The effect is contained, but decisive. The roof collapses inward. Alpha 2, Pickle. A second bomb lands near a cluster of mobile launch vehicles trying to disperse. Thermal bloom expands fast. Within seconds, 3 primary launch areas are either burning or out of action. 2:52. Iranian fighters that had been holding at distance turn north at speed. They do not challenge the strike group. On the destroyer, the captain watches the feed without expression. Assess remaining launch capability. Thermal signatures decreasing across all 3 coastal grids, intelligence reports. No additional missile plumes detected. Tomahawk flight paths complete. Strike aircraft turn south, rejoining the fleet's protective umbrella. 2:55. The Gulf remains dark. No return launches, no ballistic arcs. The 5th Fleet holds position in international waters. Steady course, steady speed. The message has been delivered not through rhetoric, but through geometry and timing. Inside CIC, logs update automatically. Every intercept, every launch, every coordinate. No celebration, only confirmation. Primary strike objectives achieved. Launch infrastructure degraded. The captain gives a small nod. Maintain elevated readiness, because in this region, silence can mean reset or recalculation. 302. Infrared satellites show residual fires along the coastline. Emergency vehicles gather near impact zones. Radar activity remains minimal. The fleet does not pursue. It does not advance. It holds. Layered defense remains active. Combat air patrol remains airborne. Electronic warfare continues scanning for fresh emissions. The counteraction was precise, limited, contained, and unmistakable. They launched to overwhelm. The fleet responded to remove capability. No warning display, no movement beyond the threat envelope. Just steel, coordination, and reach. And somewhere inland, commanders studying their own screens now see empty radar scopes and burning coordinates where launch batteries once stood. The Gulf is calm again, but the balance has shifted. Not through noise, through control. 3:18 local time. The Gulf is still. No rising trails, no radar spikes, no engine plumes cutting the night. Only the faint glow of controlled fires along the distant coastline. Small, contained, and no longer producing launch signatures. Inside CIC, the tactical display has returned to baseline. Friendly tracks only. Combat air patrol holding north. Electronic surveillance running at sustained intensity. Fleet status? The captain asks. Green across the formation. No battle damage. All systems operational. 27 inbound threats, 0 impacts. 3 launch complexes degraded. No casualties. The numbers are simple. The implications are not. Above the formation, F/A-18S rotate through fuel cycles, maintaining a visible perimeter. The E-2D Hawkeye continues its orbit, scanning hundreds of miles in every direction. On deck, ordnance crews quietly reload defensive cells. Missile tubes that fired earlier are already being replenished. This is not a victory lap. It is reset. 342. High-resolution satellite imagery of the strike zones feeds in. 1 fixed radar array reduced to debris. 2 mobile launcher positions still burning. Command bunker collapsed inward. Communications traffic in the sector sharply reduced. Residual emissions minimal. Intelligence confirms coastal radar coverage has been degraded. The 5th Fleet flagship remains steady in international waters off Bahrain. No course deviation. No retreat. Commercial traffic that had been rerouted during the engagement window begins returning to normal. Tankers resume scheduled transit. Civilian shipping lanes reopen under naval escort. There is no public announcement from the bridge. No declaration. Only continuity. 410. Iranian air assets remain grounded beyond their forward operating bases. Surface combatants in port do not sort. Electronic monitoring shows cautious, limited communication among coastal units. The attempted saturation strike did not fracture the fleet. It clarified thresholds. In modern naval conflict, escalation is measured in seconds and meters. Tonight, those measurements favored training, coordination, and layered defense. Inside CIC, sailors shift from peak adrenaline into sustained watch posture. Helmets come off. Headsets stay on. Log entries continue. Every intercept archived. Every radar emission stored. Every second timestamped. Because documentation is not optional. It is strategic. 4:55. First light begins to soften the eastern horizon. The Gulf turns from black to deep blue. Debris fields from intercepted cruise missiles drift quietly, already being mapped for recovery and analysis. The sea itself gives no sign that less than 3 hours earlier, it had been lit by ballistic arcs and defensive fire. The captain steps briefly onto the bridge wing and scans the waterline. No smoke trails now, no aircraft beyond friendly patrol, only calm water and an intact formation. They launched to intimidate, the operations officer says quietly beside him. The captain waits a moment before answering. He watches the sun crest the horizon. They miscalculated. Back inside CIC, a final status summary scrolls across the main display. 27 inbound threats neutralized, 2 ballistic intercepts confirmed, multiple cruise missiles defeated in outer and inner defensive rings, UAV reconnaissance platform removed, 3 coastal launch sites degraded, fleet operational readiness uncompromised. The 5th Fleet does not alter its patrol pattern. It does not withdraw. It does not move beyond its legal operating area. It remains. Because presence, steady, disciplined, sustained, is often more decisive than spectacle. By 6 a.m. local time, the Gulf has returned to commercial rhythm. Fishing boats move carefully along the shallows. Cargo vessels follow predictable lanes. Naval escorts maintain quiet overwatch. There will be official statements later. There will be analysis later. But at sea, the equation is simpler. They launched. The fleet absorbed the pressure, then answered with precision. No panic, no uncontrolled escalation, no overreach. Layered defense held. Strike authority was exercised within defined limits. The message was delivered without a single spoken sentence. Steel does not argue, it calculates. And in the early light over Bahrain, the Fifth Fleet sails on exactly as it had before. 217, steady course, steady speed, ready. Because in contested waters, deterrence is not loud, it is consistent. And tonight, consistency held the line.